at a time.
Bye.
Good morning. Oh,
Darcy, can you bring Lindsay over? Her chat's disabled. Sorry.
so hold on a minute before we start recording. It looks like someone else is joining. Is it Lindsay Nesbitt?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. Okay, let's begin. Are we recording?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Thank you. Good morning. Today is April 20th, 2023. It's approximately 9:30 a.m. This is the matter of application Z0427-22-CU. It's an application by the Damascus Christian School for expansion of the existing K-12 Damascus Christian School. It's described, the proposal is described as seeking a conditional use permit to incrementally increase the student and staff population at the school from 325 to 500, construction of a new 8-classroom school building and associated covered play area sports court. My name is Carl Cox. I'm a private attorney appointed by the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners as hearings officer with authority to conduct this hearing and make a determination that's in this matter. I'll state for the record, this is a quasi-judicial land use hearing, which means two important things for those participating in this hearing. First, all of the criteria that can be used in reaching a decision have been identified in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the criteria identified in the staff report or other relevant criteria found in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulation that the person believes applies to the decision. Accordingly, please direct your testimony to a relevant approval criterion. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Once final, this decision may be appealed to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. I'll further state for the record that I've not received any ex parte contact, meaning no one contacted me outside of these proceedings to try to persuade me concerning a fact or issue present in this matter. I have had an opportunity to download the exhibits that were publicly posted on the county's website, and I've had an opportunity to review those, including the county staff report and recommendation in this matter. I've also seen some public comments that were posted, at least one. I have considered issues of bias and conflict of interest and have determined that I do not have any bias or conflict of interest in this matter. Please note that the county is making a record of this hearing. That record is available through the county. Now, prior to the end or close of the record, prior to the end of this hearing, I will discuss keeping the record open for an additional time period. So there will be an opportunity to do that, to request that additional time period. At this time, I'm going to ask that the county provide an explanation concerning participation in this hearing via the Zoom platform.
Hi. The public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearings, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county's website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature. Attendees on a PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, top or bottom, depending on device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who is speaking. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you have provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will return to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, email written testimony to myself, ldance@clackamas.us, or mail it to Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division, 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, Oregon, 97045. The staff contact email address is also available on the webpage where you found the Zoom link for today's hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer written decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive a decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address by email to staff, contact, or the application, or by entering it in the Zoom chat function during the hearing. This concludes the statement.
Thank you. And if there are any questions about that, just send the staff an email about that, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. The order of proceedings will be that I will ask county staff to begin by presenting a staff report, including the staff findings and recommendation in this matter. I will then provide the applicant an opportunity to supplement that presentation, followed by an opportunity for members of the public to make comments on the application and for my consideration in determining in making my determination in this matter. I may provide an opportunity for staff or the applicant to answer questions. All right, please proceed.
Right. I'm gonna get screen share on. Just let me see. Share. Okay, are you seeing the PowerPoint page?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, just give me a minute to get everything set up. Okay. We're here to discuss today, April 20th, 2023, land use case file number Z0427-22, conditional use, Damascus Community Church and Christian School. I'm Elizabeth Dance, Planner 2 with Clackamas County Planning and Zoning. Z0427-22 is for the expansion of the Damascus Community Church and Christian School. The property is located at 4251 Southeast Rust Way, with an additional 2 properties that have been requested to be adjusted into the parcel through a property line adjustment. The entire property is in the rural area residential 1-acre zoning. With the property line adjustments, the property will be approximately 7.09 acres in size. Here's a rendering provided by the applicant that addresses the existing church facility and school facility with the addition of the classroom building. This doesn't include the sports court location. The Damascus Community Church was established in 1967 through a conditional use review and has been expanded and altered through conditional use reviews. Currently, the church and K-12 school campus consists of 6 buildings and supports 325 students, parishioners, and staff. The applicant seeks approval for the expansion of the Damascus Community Church campus, including the addition of a new 8-room classroom building and covered outdoor sports court to allow for the increase in student body, parishioners, and employees from 325 to 500 total people through this conditional use application. The project scope of work includes development of 2 new buildings, installation of landscaping, expansion of the established septic system to be approved by Department of Environmental Quality, frontage improvements, and stormwater improvements. This is kind of a zoom in of the site with an aerial photo showing the existing site as it's developed and the 2 lots to be incorporated through property line adjustments. Through the property line adjustments that have been approved and not recorded at this time, this home will be demolished, and this is the location of the new 8-room classroom building, and this home will be retained. There is no proposed change of this home at this point in time. Here's an overall site plan provided with the application. It has the 2 entrances and then the exit only onto Highway 212. And then the sports court facility and the classroom facility, pedestrian walkways connecting, and then the primary entrance for the building kind of coming into the larger campus development area. Approval criteria and discussion. This discussion and presentation are going to provide a preliminary approval criteria for the conditional use review, subject to the zoning and development ordinance sections listed here. 316 is the RA1 zoning designation. Sections 804 and 805 are the code sections that address churches and schools. And then the 1000 series are the design and development aspects regarding building design, safety, roads and transportation, parking, circulation. 1203 addresses conditional uses. We're going to start with the conditional use guidelines and criteria and go through those standards, and then that leads us into the rest of the zoning code. Section 120303 lists 6 approval criteria that are required to be addressed for a conditional use request. 120303, the use listed as a conditional use in the zone is listed as a conditional use in the zoning district in which the subject property is located. This property is located in the rural area residential 1-acre zone, outlined by zoning development ordinance section 316. Table 316.1 lists schools and churches as a conditional use. Section 120303 addresses characteristics of the property are suitable for the proposed use. They consider size, shape, location, topography, existence and improvements to the natural features. The submitted site plan and narrative demonstrate that the property is sufficient size to accommodate the proposed use and will meet the required setbacks as proposed. The setback for the 8 classroom building and sports court as represented on the site plan and landscape plans are 35 feet from the front southeast wise court and 25 feet from the north side boundary. The classroom building will be separated from the residence to the north with a hedgerow running east-west for the length of the building to the right of way, with additional landscaping along southeast wise court. Shape and topography. The property is gradually sloped and irregular in shape. The proposed property line adjustments will increase the parcel size by combining 2 parcels to the west, where the proposed development will take place. Location. The site is located at the intersection of Highway 212 and Rust Way, surrounded by residential uses to the north, east, and west, and commercial uses to the south across Highway 212. Improvements. The proposal is for 2 new buildings, a 7,788 square foot 8-room classroom building and a 3,920 square foot covered sports court off of Southeast Wise Court. The new development with expanded student body requires additional landscaping, pedestrian connectivity, surface water management, DEQ septic improvements, on-site circulation, and parking and increased services. Natural features. There are no identified natural features on the property. The location, size, shape, topography, natural features, and development characteristics of the property are suitable to accommodate the proposed use. Section 1203.03c. The proposed use is consistent with subsection 100707, which is the transportation engineering standards, and safety and transportation system is adequate to serve the proposed use. As outlined in the traffic impact analysis prepared by Lancaster Mobley, which assesses peak hour vehicle trips, pickup and drop off, on-site vehicle queuing, total parking, and impact to traffic in the surrounding area, states the impacts of the proposed expansion to the existing transportation within the site vicinity are expected to be minimal. The new site trips are not expected to significantly alter the operation of the existing transportation facilities. Review of this report in conjunction with no change or alteration to the established ingress and egress of the site, including ODOT Highway 212 exit only, right only exit. Planning staff finds that the roadway and intersections serving the project site will continue to operate within standards satisfying the provisions of section 1007-07. The traffic assessment also evaluated on-site capacity of drop-off and pickup for students. There is a 400-foot long queue area on site that will accommodate approximately 40 vehicles. The traffic assessment estimated that at a 95% usage queue will result in 36 vehicles. Based on this, the current circulation is adequate to accommodate drop-off and pickup on site without causing impact to the surrounding public streets. $12,003. The proposed use will not alter the character of the surrounding area in a manner that substantially limits, impairs, or precludes the use of the surrounding properties for permitted uses allowed in the zoning district in which surrounding properties are located. The project site is in the rural area 1 acre zone. Surrounding areas to the north of Highway 12 are zoned RA1 and RA10 and generally in residential use. Commercial zoning and uses are established to the south of Highway 212 and also to the west of the site. Uses allowed in the RA1 zone are listed in Table 316 of the Zoning and Development Ordinance and are generally residential in nature. This site has been established as a church and school campus since 1967. The proposal does not change the established use of a church and school. The conditional use permit aspect of this request is to expand the already established school facility from what has been reviewed in the school's original conditional use permit from 1967 and expanded in 1996. The request is to allow the expansion of the student body and provide additional education facilities, including an 8-classroom building and sports court. The structures proposed would become part of the Damascus Community Church and School campus. The current proposal includes an expansion of the student staffing and parishioners from 325 to 500 people. There is no proposed change of the established church and school buildings. There is no proposed or required alteration of the existing vehicle access and parking. The required expansion of the surface water management, landscaping, septic facility, and services have been assessed through the submittal. Staff is able to support this proposal with recommended conditions and finds that as proposed, the school expansion will not substantially limit, impair, or preclude the use of the surrounding properties from their allowed uses. $12,303. The proposed use complies with any applicable requirements for the zoning district and overlay zoning districts in which the subject property is located. The RA1 zone, section 316 of the zoning code, and section 1000, the 1000 series, which includes development standards. The applicant is requesting a conditional use approval for the expansion of the Damascus Community Church and School with additional of a new 8-classroom building and covered sports court associated with improvements on the school campus. The school use is classified as institutional. Therefore, section 1000 development standards apply to the application. The 1000 sections will be addressed in the following slides. There's the first few things we're talking about natural features. The property doesn't have any identified natural or restricted features, no slopes over 20%, no excessive tree removal, wooded areas. This standard is not applicable to this project as proposed. Sections 1003 and 1004 of the zoning code address hazards and safeties, including geologic hazard areas, mass movement and soil areas, and flood hazards. None of those areas are identified on this property. Section 1004 addresses historic preservation. There's been no historic designations on this property. Section 1005 includes site and building design standards. We'll start with the site design, 1005-02 site design. The proposed development layout demonstrates that buildings have been clustered on the school and church campus. The design includes a pedestrian walkway and ADA accessible network that allows separate, efficient, and convenient circulations for pedestrians from vehicles. The submitted plan illustrates the interior pedestrian walkway network connects all the buildings to existing parking areas and rights of way. On-site circulation for vehicle and pedestrians for the primary school has previously been approved by the county and is established. Access to the proposed new structures are shown as utilizing existing school driveway circulation. Proposed access to the classroom building and sports court will add to the pedestrian facilities that presently serve the school.
Mhm.
Building design. The submitted elevations illustrate that the proposed 8-room school building and entry facade design utilize architecture elements and provide visual interest through the glazing, articulation, building mass modulation, and detailing consistent with educational use. Consistent with this section, the submitted plans indicate that the west facade has multiple windows and a door opening. And there are changes in the pattern of the siding material. The west doorway is centered on the facade and is accessed from a pedestrian walkway. The western facade features deciduous and evergreen plantings to frame the door and features doors and windows which allow views to and from the building. These windows are placed with a rhythmic pattern to support interior daylight strategy. The proposed roof slope is consistent with the existing church building. The building is residential in scale. The siding is similar to the dwellings in the adjacent neighborhood. The proposed building will be visible from Southeast Wise Court, Highway 212, and the interior church campus. Therefore, these standards apply to the building facades to the north and west faces. The applicant submitted elevations of these facades with the application materials to demonstrate compliance with the building design standards and other applicable standards. And then there's the standards regarding entries as well. The building does have, this is the entrance that faces Wise Court, where there will be a pedestrian walkway. And then this is the interior entrance that will be the primary entrance to the classroom building that'll come in from the church campus.
Okay.
I wanted to show the zoning code requires entryways off of right-of-ways. And so there has to be an entry off of Wise Court. And then the primary entrance will be facing the interior of the larger campus.
I have a question about the front, if you'll go back.
Yeah.
So from Wise Court, I understand that there's a existing single family residence, and that's been the development of this particular lot and the adjacent lot, which will retain its single family residence, at least for now.
Yeah.
But is there anticipated any kind of fencing between this structure and Wise Court? Is it going to have some type of front yard fence?
Not along the front yard. There's fencing and vegetation proposed along the north property boundary between the building and the adjacent residential lot, but not along the frontage.
Okay, so I saw in the proposal and the county's conditions of approval kind of overlapping these things. What I envision is it looks like there is a requirement for a 6-foot wide pedestrian walkway that is along the entire frontage of both of these properties. Yeah. And that the front facing the roadway is developed to design standards to make it more or less blend in, at least somewhat, with the existing residential structures. So the fencing will be only to the side of the house and along the side of these property lines running back to the church property?
Yep, that's my understanding as it's laid out.
Not a screen, not a fence in front between the sidewalk and the structure.
No, they're keeping some of the existing trees and adding more vegetation here to kind of keep that neighborhood character. And then there's a hedgerow proposed along this entire boundary here.
Okay, those are, to me, Thank you for answering that.
Yep. Okay. Building entries. So the plans demonstrate the building entries. I kind of went through all of that. I'm going to skip to specific design elements, including facades, windows, roof design, and materials with ratios and development standards. The proposed school building and entry facade utilized transparent glazing to provide visual interest at a minimum of 40% at the first floor's linear frontage. Elevations demonstrate the proposed structures provide 24-inch eave overhangs as required. The applicant states and staff concurs that all exterior building materials have been chosen for their aesthetic appeal throughout the campus. And then there's the requirements for safety and surveillance, and then also solar access. Surveillance and walkways and outdoor recreation facilities can be achieved as proposed by locating these facilities within the courtyard that can be viewed from adjacent structures on the campus. The submitted plan demonstrates the proposed landscaping design permits surveillance of campus facilities. The building elevations and architectural renderings show that windows are concentrated on the south and north sides of the building, and eaves and architecture features that are regulated will regulate solar access. And then for lighting, the applicant states that the proposed lighting will meet the requirements of the section. Lighting addresses no light shall be directed skyward. Lights shall not be on poles that exceed 25 feet. Walkways should be illuminated, and entrances should also have lighting on them. As proposed lighting will meet requirements of this section. Proposed lighting is architecturally integrated with the character of the proposed structures. Site design and landscape directs light downward and not skyward. The lighting proposed is suitable for the use which it serves. That is, all lighting serves the walkways on the exteriors of the proposed buildings. All lighting is compatible with the respect to the scale, intensity, and height of fixtures and does not exceed 25 feet. In the building and design standards, there is a requirement for additional design features. This development, with its size, the proposed expansion is, the site is getting 1.17 or 50,978 square feet larger. This level of expansion requires three additional design elements be implemented. The applicant has stated that they will be using 3 of the design elements outlined in our zoning code as items B, D, and G. They also address that they are interested in addressing item A, which would be adding solar panels to the buildings at some point in time. That is not part of this proposal, but something they mentioned in their submittal. The first item that they chose to use was passive solar heating and cooling techniques to reduce energy consumption. The building elevations demonstrate that windows are placed to optimize natural daylight and minimize glare. The included landscaping plan includes deciduous shade trees along the south and west boundaries of the classroom building. They're placing the major sports court area is placed on here, let me go back to this site plan. The sports court here is placed on the south of the proposed classroom building, kind of within existing structures to help it, to protect it from crosswinds and winds coming from the north, and that's one of the standards that plazas and playgrounds be placed on the south side of buildings, and as proposed, that's what they're doing. And then the third one is to provide landscaping at least 10% above the requirements of the site pursuant table 1009, which is the landscaping standards. Conditional uses are required to have a 25% landscape requirement. This submittal includes 40% of landscaping just on the development area, and the overall site is landscaped at 0.09%. So those are the 3 additional techniques they're looking to use as far as design criteria. Next, that's all of the section 1000. That's all the design criteria. We're going to move into the 1006, which addresses utilities, streetlights, water and waste, surface water, and erosion control. When we're looking at water, Sunrise Water Authority is the water provider in the area. They provided a statement of feasibility and then provided additional information. They say there is adequate water available to serve the requested property. However, they do want to have that water availability assessed again with development permit issuance. There's a recommended condition of approval addressing the fact that Sunrise Water Authority will again review water at the time of development permit issuance. This property is served by a septic system, so we are going to be addressing on-site wastewater treatment. Currently, the septic system on the property is at capacity. The proposed capacity to handle up to 500 people exceeds the threshold of what county septic on-site wastewater program can review. This expansion requires approval from the Department of Environmental Quality. The applicant has been working with DEQ and county staff regarding the permitting and expansion. Without a land use determination, Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division cannot complete the required land use compatibility statement for the assessment and installation of a Department of Environmental Quality septic system. DEQ's Jessica Joy, on-site wastewater specialist, has provided comments and included in Exhibit 4 regarding the system expansion and is currently working with the applicant. Planning Condition 3 is recommended. Prior to development permits associated with Clackamas County building expansion, expanding the total number of people beyond the current established 325 will require approval and verification of the installation of a DEQ permitted septic system. Surface water management and erosion control. All development shall provide positive drainage and adequate conveyance of storm surface water runoff from roofs, footings, foundations, and other impervious or near impervious surfaces to the appropriate discharge point. Clackamas County Department of Transportation and Engineering Surface Water Authority is the surface water authority for this property. A preliminary statement of feasibility dated within this year for the submitted with the engineered surface water management and erosion control plan was submitted and reviewed for compliance with these standards. The surface water management and erosion control plan will be implemented and inspected per Department of Transportation Engineering and Oregon Department of Transportation standards through site development permitting. The proposal includes stormwater drainage tying into the Oregon Department of Transportation Highway 212 drainage system, requiring the applicant obtain a permit from ODOT prior to development permit issuance. A condition requiring this permit and verification of tie-in approval is required and recommended as condition 2C and also 4 of the staff recommendation. Roads and connectivity. Section 1007-02 addresses developments within the urban growth boundary are required to improve roadway and frontage of projects of the site subject to roadway standards. This site is located within the urban growth boundary. Roadway and frontage improvements are required. The existing frontage on Highway 212 and Rustway are improved, including curb and curb sidewalk. The frontage on Southeast Wise Court is improved with a curb and no sidewalk on either side. As mitigation for additional impacts on the transportation system and development along the frontage of Southeast Wise Court, the applicant will be required to provide adequate pedestrian access along the site frontage of Wise Court. A 6-foot wide sidewalk will be required from the start of the cul-de-sac extending north on the property line of current tax lot 107. Private roads and access drives. Location, alignment, grade, width, and capacity of all roads and right-of-way dedications and improvements for institutional uses. The school and church use is an institutional use. These standards apply with recommended conditions 4, 1 through 6. The location, alignment, design, grade, width, and capacity of all roads shall be planned, coordinated, and controlled by the Department of Transportation and Engineering. Right-of-way dedications shall be required for new developments. The application submitted a conditional use application to increase the student population in the Damascus Christian School from 325 to 500. The project site is served by 2 existing driveways on Southeast Rustway and 1 right out only exit drive on Highway 212. No changes to the existing access are proposed with this application. The proposed classroom building and covered play area are proposed on tax lot 1,107 and 8 that will be incorporated into the main property through property line adjustments. The existing house on tax lot 107 will be removed and the house on tax lot 108 will be retained. As a result, the property line adjustment, the project site will have frontage on Southeast Wise Court. The preliminary plans identify a pedestrian walkway connection to Southeast Wise Court and a water line connection with recommended conditions of approval for these standards as outlined can be met. 1007-7 requires that the capacity of the transportation system is adequate to serve the proposed development. This is just to add a note. We've received I think I've received 2 comments since the start of my presentation. And the access and traffic capacity seems to be one of the larger concerns of surrounding property owners. Under roadway standards, section 295-2B, a traffic impact study is required when a development will generate more than 20 peak hour vehicle trips. The applicant has provided a transportation assessment by Lancaster Mobley dated August 17th, 2022, addressing trip generation, on-site circulation, and intersection site distance. The proposed conditional use will result in an increase of 138 morning peak hour trips, 94 afternoon peak hour trips, and 30 evening peak hour trips, and 434 total daily trips. The traffic impact analysis finds that with the proposed use, roadways and intersections within the influence area of the site will operate with adequate capacity and safety. Engineering staff concur with the traffic assessment findings. The roads serving the project site have adequate capacity, and engineering staff finds that the roadways will continue to operate within the standards with additional traffic generated by the proposed development. Landscaping. We kind of went over this a little bit ago, but just to be a little bit redundant. Addressing the required increase in landscaping relative to the scope of additional site area. And so in this, we look at landscape materials, we look at the landscape areas, and then we look at the requirement for conditional uses that 25% of the area be landscaped. As mentioned earlier, they're asking to add an additional 10% of landscaping to have that additional design feature. As proposed, the landscaping is at 40%. The landscape area provided has a predominant of 75% native plants. It includes visual buffering and is maintaining some of the larger existing trees on the site. A condition of approval is recommended regarding the maintenance plans. Landscaping maintenance plans shall be installed, and then there should also be a 1-year maintenance requirement to ensure survivability of plants. Recommended condition 2.4 outlines that requirement. Parking. ZDO section 1015, parking. Submitted plan and building floor plans indicate that Damascus Christian School will be expanded to accommodate 8 classrooms with proposed school expansion development. Per table 1015-1, elementary and junior high schools require a minimum of 15 vehicle parking spaces, 2 parking spaces per classroom, whichever is less. Therefore, a minimum of 15 additional parking spaces are required for the elementary and junior high school. For high school uses, a minimum of 0.2 parking spaces are required per student or staff member. Per parking analysis included with the attached traffic impact statement, 160 existing on-site and 75 adjacent on-street parking spaces will continue to exceed the minimum parking demand for the existing use and proposed improvements to the school. No changes to solid waste and recycling have been proposed. And what is there is adequate to serve the expanded use. And then as far as signage, 1010 signage, no new signage is being proposed or reviewed with this request at this time. Sections 804 and 805 address places of worship in schools. This is for the expansion of school. There's no change to the church proposed through this request. Only condition when you look in section 805 schools is that any new development or new school buildings are 20 feet from side lot lines. As proposed, the new school building will be at least, I think it's 35 feet from the south lot line, so well over the 20-foot setback requirement. County staff recommends approval with conditions. I need to update this. I wrote this and then got comments. So at this point in time, I think we've received 4, maybe 3 written comments. I haven't been able to review the comment that just came in prior to the meeting. The comments that have been received so far were addressing concerns related to Wise Court traffic and access. There is proposed pedestrian pathway, as we've seen in the plans, that connect the classroom and sports courts to the entire campus and with a pedestrian walkway to Wise Court. There's been no review or request for vehicle access to the campus through Wise Court. The existing home to remain will continue to have a single driveway entrance to serve the home only, with no connection to the larger church and school campus. The previous land use determinations, traffic impact analysis, parking, and queuing assessments do not address any pickup or drop off along Southeast Wise Court. This area has not been approved as a campus drop off or pickup area. And then I just wanted to, I had a few phone calls addressing some of the larger master plan documents that are included in the submittal. This submittal does include a larger master plan. However, the conditional use request we're looking at today is only addressing the expansion of the 2 buildings, the 8 classroom building and the sports court, with the expansion of the student body to 500 students, parishioners, and staff. This concludes staff's presentation of the requested conditional use application.
Thank you very much. I'd like to provide an opportunity for the applicant to provide supplement to the county's staff report and presentation. And I do have a couple of questions for the applicant. So do we have the representative for the applicant? Is that Mr. Smith or Mr. Lewis? Okay. Mr. Lewis, would you state your name for the record and your role in this hearing?
Yes, my name is Matt Lewis. I'm a civil engineer with Stantec, formerly Cardno, and I'm acting as the project manager for this phase of the project, and want to note that we have our development team available to assist in answering any questions. That includes Brett Smith, who is the lead pastor at Damascus Christian Community Christian Church and School, as well as Robin Robleski, who is representing Malum as the architect. We also have, I think perhaps in the audience, but if not, I can cover any landscape architecture questions. Becky Strickler is our lead there. For transportation questions, we have Jennifer Danziger with Lancaster Mobley. And to assist with the land use narrative and code specific questions, we have Steve Kay from Cascadia Planning. I might have some additional, there might be some additional input from my civil engineering team too, as it relates to septic or other utility questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I may not list everyone that you just stated. If they're not participating, they'll just have, there were additional people present. My first question though, is did the applicant have an opportunity to review the conditions of approval as proposed by the county staff? I'd like to know if there are any, just at the outset here, if there are any objections to those conditions of approval, or does the applicant agree with the stated proposed conditions of approval?
Yes, we did have an opportunity to review them and do not have any specific contention or questions with them as published.
I'd like to talk about one potential area to perhaps have an additional condition of approval. The Weiss Court, as I see it, won't be, and I asked a couple questions about that. It won't be secured from Weiss Court. There will be a pedestrian pathway in front of those 2 properties, and accessing Weiss Court directly along and between these what will become one property, but the 2 existing homes. So I saw where there'll be a a walkway along that classroom, the new proposed classroom, to the existing church and campus behind it. So my concern here is about the potential of use for that as a drop-off point through that residential neighborhood that's not approved. And what I'm asking is that the school consider discussing with me right now that they will provide instructions for all drop-off and pickup to occur out front of the campus as it's currently happening, where the safety analysis took place, where it's under supervision. I think that we're on the same page here. So I would like to just word something along those lines that takes care of what I see as a potential safety issue for kiddos and a annoyance issue for the neighborhood behind the school along White's Court if people start using it as an alternative to picking up through the traditional car line.
Sure.
Yeah, so something to that effect. And what I'm going to ask is that you consider what I've just stated, and I'd rather have the applicant make a proposal and submit it for something that makes sense, rather than me make up something out of my best intentions. Okay, so
Sure.
I've kind of got a little bit of a to-do list. I'd like to see something submitted as a proposed condition of approval to meet that need. Please proceed. You had some additional things to add.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on that. You probably noticed from our nodding heads that we're in agreement with the safety consideration. Obviously there's an obligation to provide that the access from the building, both from a egress perspective as well as the county standards. So that is provided. The school was not aware of the queuing circumstance on Weiss Court, and so we did have a chance to see that comment in advance, and Brett can speak to it further. But I think with this proposal, it actually provides greater opportunity to manage that potential issue. And Liz walked through the fencing that is provided from the north property line. That back door will be secured and at the control of the school to manage. The fence does continue south and crosses over the pedestrian walkway, and then on the west side of the play area, and kind of encircles that west boundary. So it really does provide greater control for the school to manage.
Sure, Mr. Lewis. So when you say that that fence will cross there, are we talking about a gate that locks or something like that?
Correct. We'll have lockable gates on the north end. The building will serve as the secure west perimeter, and then south of the building there will be gates that are lockable across the pedestrian access. Okay, so what I anticipate, just let me to clarify, you'll have some kind of secure fence that runs to the side, each side of the proposed classroom, that it will have a lockable gate on at least one side, probably opens from the inside to allow access to the outside, but not the reverse, something of that nature. Okay. Correct. Yeah, it'll have panic hardware, but it'll be controlled to prevent access from the west side. Okay, thank you for answering my questions.
Just to add to that, we'd see it more as an emergency exit or entry for police and fire, nothing for students.
I thank you for clarifying, and I view it the same way. It's why I was asking my questions.
Would you like us to work to present that condition during this hearing or as a follow-up?
As a follow-up.
Okay.
And I'll state at the outset that, or as I stated at the outset, the record will stay open until 4 p.m. today, and I will provide an opportunity for requests to extend that. So before we close this hearing, so we'll talk about that. But in any case, it'll be open till 4.
Thank you.
Did you have something further?
Oh, no, otherwise, we appreciate the staff report and recommendation. We've been working with them pretty closely hand in hand. Appreciate staff's availability to help answer questions in advance and kind of work through the code issues. I think we've been able to do that, hence the recommendation of approval. And like I mentioned, we have our team available to provide supplemental information, but we don't have a specific additional presentation to provide.
All right. And I understand that you've not had an opportunity to review some of the public comments that were made. At this time, I'm going to invite participation by members of the public. You please use the raise hand feature. State your name and address if you want to receive, well, state your name, please, but also state your address or contact information if you'd like a copy of the report. If you just want to access it yourself, county staff did provide an explanation for how to do that. It will be posted on the county's website. Do we have any members of the general public that are using their raise hand feature?
I have one. Well, a hand went up and it went back down. Somebody by the name of Laurel.
Laurel, were you asking to participate in the hearing?
Yes, this was
Okay.
Steve.
And I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Steve Crover,
Could you spell that, please?
Crover.
Okay, thank you, sir. And your address, if you'd like to have a copy mailed, or you can provide your email address to staff if you'd prefer.
20900 Southeast Lansing Lane.
Thank you.
I don't think there's been any consideration to the effect in the community of Rustway, Lansing Lane to egress and exit from the area during the high traffic times during school beginning and ending. It usually bottles up the exit on Rustway, and I anticipate this will even further increase that inability to enter or exit.
For county staff in reviewing the request, there was a traffic impact analysis required. And perhaps Ken Kent can address this a little bit further, but the impact analysis looked at vehicle trips, added vehicle trips, and the added impact, and then the capacity of the surrounding roads. That report, as provided and then reviewed by planning and transportation engineering, looked like the roads had capacity to handle the additional increased vehicle trips.
The capacity may be there, but the time element wasn't considered.
Yeah, it takes 10 minutes to turn right.
Entry and exit from Rustway is problematic on Highway 212, particularly if you choose to turn left.
Or Old Barn Lane, they can't get out at all.
Old Barn Lane's got the same issue.
Did the county or applicant have a statement in response for me to consider about the traffic?
Sure. Maybe as you mentioned, we haven't had a chance to review these in depth, of course, but we do have our traffic engineer, Jennifer Danziger, on the line. I'll open it up to Jennifer with the understanding that we may want to supplement our response if need be.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, and you're Ms. Danziger, and
Yes.
what's your qualifications?
Sure. I'm a traffic engineer with Lancaster Mobley. Our address is 321 Southwest 4th Street, Portland, Oregon 97214.
Thank you.
We did do a traffic analysis for this project. We consulted with both ODOT because 212 is a highway facility, as well as the Clackamas County traffic staff. ODOT did not have interest in having us analyze the Rustway Highway 212 intersection. And in talking to county staff, I think they opted not to have the specific analysis done for that, recognizing that it's a congested intersection. It's influenced by the downstream traffic signal, and the queuing often extends up that direction. And recognizing that with schools, it's a very, very intense peak of traffic that occurs, and that the rest of the day, for the most part, the congestion is not school related. Anything that's going on there is just due to the highway traffic itself. And so I think that was the reason why we were not required specifically to look at operational analysis at those intersections. The focus of this was primarily on safety in terms of how the school would impact the roadways. Was the queuing going to extend out into the street during that period of time? And also, we did look at the crash history on those roadways to see if anything was school related, and we did not see school related crash history at the intersections with along the highway.
Okay. So what I understand you're saying is, and I did read the report. It's, I thought off the top of my head, it was something like a maximum queue of 40 vehicles was allowed, or something
Right.
like that. And your analysis was that it would never, or anticipated not to exceed
Right.
38, I think.
Or yeah, 36, I think. So the
36.
school has a very, very managed system that they use to address pickup and drop off on site. It's not to say it's not very busy during that time period, but it is designed to really optimize the way vehicles do queue in the parking lot, and facilitate the drop off of students in the morning and then the pickup of students in the afternoon. So we did look at those things and work with Brett to kind of understand how their operations are done. And we estimate that based on that, they should be able to still include everyone in the parking lot with the growth in the school.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. Mr. Grover, did you have an additional comment or something for me to consider on this?
I just thought it was odd that Clackamas County and the state chose not to review this. Seems like we're being ignored here.
Yeah, so I'd like to say, we've lived out here in this location for
Oh,
50.
would you please state your name as well?
I'm Laurel Crover, Mrs. Crover.
Okay.
And same address. And we're Christians, and this is our 50th year here. We have nothing against, I mean, I love Christian schools. Our grandkids go to Grandview. And however, in the 50 years we've been here, so we've seen the growth and what happens we live on Lansing Lane. Lansing Lane only exit through Rust Way to get to the highway. It's a dead end. Rust Way is a dead end. So what has happened over the years is since the schools come in, and they've worked with us, like people parking on both sides of the street on Rust Way itself. If I'm coming home in the afternoon, they're waiting in a long line to turn left into the school to get up in a 2-lane pickup line. And they have worked hard to accommodate picking up and getting it done in a timely fashion. We had a real problem with it blocking both sides of the street, so we would have to wait to get on up to Lansing so we could come home. So for a while, they put up park on only one side of the street signs to try to give us, you know, and, but their parking lot, if they can't do anything else, they need a larger parking lot. So that they can adequately have people that are coming in park. And anyway, it is just Highway 212 is problematic. Like I say, I will go out there and sit 10 minutes to turn right. And
That's frustrating.
it is very frustrating. And one thing about ODOT is they finally wised up to make a left-hand turn off of Foster onto Highway 212. The whole area is just, you know, so it hurts me to think that they wouldn't even look at, ODOT wouldn't look at putting a light out at the end of Rust Way so that people could turn left or whatever. Anyway, the people that live here, we're the ones, you know, I know there's not that many houses up here in the two dead-end lanes, but for us that have lived here for a long time, and we're getting older, so we get crankier. Anyhow, but it's too bad. I agree with my husband. It's kind of a concern that ODOT, I realize since it is a Highway 212, they need to be involved. I wish they would look at it the way they did Foster Road. And boy, I complained about that for a long time. So anyway, that just put my 2 cents in.
Well, and as you suggested, they're working directly with ODOT can sometimes, you know, provide an additional relief for people that live in a certain area, perhaps street widening, and additional turn lanes, additional right-hand only lanes, and things of that nature. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your participation.
Thank you.
No problem.
Is there another member of the public that wants to, and excuse me,
I have somebody by the name of Peszkowski.
would you please
Yes,
state
hi.
your name?
My name is Mark Paszkowski. Thank you very much. That was a great pronunciation. It's P as in Peter, A, C, Z as in zebra, Kowski. I live at 14011 Southeast Rust Way, just a couple of houses down from the school. And my only question would be, if this plan was to go through, what kind of issues or what kind of time frame are we looking for construction, and how would that look for the surrounding areas?
Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mark. You know, construction is going to be contingent upon permitting. And in this case, although there's a pretty prescriptive process to get through land use and into building permits and construction, in this case, being that we're working with Oregon DEQ on the septic system, some of those timelines are a little bit less defined. As it stands, we know that we have to go through a process with DEQ for a septic approval, and that may take another 8 to 10 months. So we're looking at the prospect to start potentially before the end of the year, but it will be contingent upon permitting, receipt of appropriate permits. And with that, not to put Robin on the spot, but in terms of construction duration, we have looked at that. We have a general contractor on board, and they've developed some preliminary scheduling. Robin, offhand, do you know what the construction schedule looks like?
The preliminary schedule would be ideally getting permission, like all the septic permits by the end of the year, and really ramping up and breaking ground in the late spring of next year once things start drying out. doing construction throughout the summer and hopefully finishing by the following spring. But again, a lot of it depends on the permits. So,
Certainly. And your role in this is?
oh, I'm an architect at Malum Architects.
At Yalen.
Malum,
Malum.
Mahlum.
I did read a report there, so, but I don't always get everyone's name.
You're good. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you have another comment, sir?
Just really quick, I also kind of second the previous participants' comments about the traffic and whatnot, and I know that that obviously has been addressed, but yeah, just piggybacking on that, I agree with everything that they've indicated as well.
I understand your concerns. It's it has when additional traffic is anticipated by an increase in development, it always mostly affects the immediate neighborhood.
I
Yeah,
appreciate your time. Thank you.
yeah, we would just acknowledge that as well and appreciate the input. You know, obviously we're working to meet the criteria set by the agencies for approval, but that doesn't mean that the church isn't open to you know, assessing the logistics of pickup and drop off and working with the community to make that best function.
Sometimes those kind of soft relationships are best, working with the community to develop different drop-off techniques, or at least let a neighborhood know that they're listening and making those efforts. Thank you. Is there any other member of the general public?
I have Randy Johnson.
Thank you.
And I do have written comment from him. If you want me to share that as well, I have that available.
Mr. Johnson?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Will you state your name and address?
I think I lost audio for your end there.
I was asking you to state your name and address, sir.
Well, I'll go ahead and state my comment. I did provide an email to Elizabeth earlier today. So I just kind of want to do a quick recap of that. So I'm Randy Johnson, 17579 Southwest Dodson Drive, Sherwood, Oregon. I'm a former resident of Weiss Court. I'm a transportation engineer, registered Oregon PE. And so just wanted to provide some insights, having lived here for so long. So I reviewed the TIA, had a couple concerns, questions specific to subsection 100707. One is on the ITE trip generation land use code that was provided. It was proposed with a private school use for K through 12, which, as indicated in the TIA, is based off of the limited survey size. Of those limited surveys, it does state that some of the schools in those surveys included school bus service, as well as carpool services in place of school bus services. Damascus Christian School does not provide any school bus services, nor have a formal carpool program. It does appear in the handbook that they do coordinate or provide addresses for parents to arrange independent carpools. But without the bus services and the limited survey size, there's a potential that the trip generation assumed is underrepresenting the potential trips that this school and school expansion would propose. In addition, the exiting directional distribution of those trips is at 37%, which is generally lower than other school land use codes for trip generation. And without that school bus service, there's a higher likelihood of pickup and drop off. So that rate in reality could be higher. I would recommend that traffic counts be collected at all driveways, so the existing trip rate can be verified and determine if the expansion needs to utilize a different rate. In addition, I was also a bit surprised to not see that the county and ODOT require capacity analysis at Rustway and Highway 212. Typically with the a school expansion like this and the number of trips generated, you would see capacity analysis of a adjacent facility like that. So with the traffic count recommendation, I'd also recommend capacity analysis at that location to assess queuing, left turn potential given the extreme delays for turning left off of Rustway. As the other citizen mentioned, a single vehicle turning left can cause a 5 to 10 minute delay. And I know a lot of the citizens already cut through the school parking lot to make that right turn. So I'd like to see the assessment for a left turn lane there, as well as a signal warrant analysis, realizing that the development may be just a proportional share of an improvement. So to look at the different signal warrants to see whether or not that is truly warranted. And then my final comment is regarding the Weiss Court access. Having done many studies for schools, the neighborhood backdoor access is a chronic problem with many schools. Enforcement is extremely challenging. In fact, I pick up and drop off my kid and park in the no parking zone waiting to pick up my kid, and I'll say I'm not parking, I'm waiting. So it's a chronic issue. And so if there is any possible access, I see Weiss Court as being the go-to for all students that live north of Highway 212, because Weiss Court allows access to the school without having to ever get on to Highway 212, which is a big safety and challenging endeavor. The problem with any additional parking or pickup drop off on Weiss Court is the intersection of Weiss Court and Weiss Road has severe sight distance limitations. It's kind of in a little valley right there. And there's a chronic issue with speeding along Weiss Road. So I would recommend that sight distance be assessed at that intersection, as well as a speed study along Weiss Road. The enforcement is probably the biggest concern for the long-term pickup drop-off potential, as well as during construction, which could be a lengthy period of time, construction vehicles, construction worker traffic. But that intersection at Weiss Court and Weiss Road has been a safety issue for decades.
I didn't look at that. I
I
will look
conclude
over
my comments there.
I'll look over your comments, and I haven't seen those yet, and I will consider the concerns that you raised here. If you were here earlier during the hearing, you did hear some discussion about the concerns that I actually raised myself about the issue you're discussing about the sort of backdoor pickup off of Weiss Court. I've asked the applicant to propose a condition of approval around monitoring that and working to, and honestly, I don't view it as possible to completely stop, but to prevent it to the best of their ability. Mr. Johnson, did you?
Yeah, sorry. As soon as you guys switched over to me, my I couldn't hear you guys, so I just fixed that issue. So I missed the first half of what you said. Sorry.
Oh, if you were here earlier during the hearing as a observer, then you would have heard that I raised the same issue about safety and that potential for that access via Weiss Court for pickup and drop off. And I asked that the applicant propose the conditions of approval.
Yeah, the other challenge is, say, Sunday church service. I know there's members of the congregation that live on Weiss Court, and I'm assuming they would want to have walk access. So, you know, or if you have students that live there, I know formerly there were students that lived on that street. So is it fully gated off, or it's that control is going to be challenging on the long run of, do you completely close off the access or do you provide the access, and how is that managed and enforced over time? And whose responsibility is that ultimately?
Ultimately, I think that the property owner is responsible for the safety of their invitees. So when churchgoers are present on a given Sunday, if the church has a system for allowing pedestrian walkers to access those pedestrian walk paths, then it'll be up to the church if that's the case. Whether I approve this expansion or of their conditional use permit or not, it's still their responsibility in that area.
Okay.
All right. Did you have something else to add?
That is all.
And I will absolutely review the comments the written comments that you submitted, and I'll look to that. Okay. Thank you for your participation, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have another member of the general public?
It looks like Mr. Crover still has his hand up.
I wasn't planning on revisiting, a rebuttal by the members of the general public or providing that opportunity. Did we have a response by the applicant or the county to the concerns raised by Mr. Johnson?
I think in terms of the management of that west access, we will work with the church to provide an explanation as to how that will be managed and enforced. Again, I'll give Ms. Danziger an opportunity to respond to some of the comments, but we may need to digest those a bit and provide a more formal response following the hearing.
And that's fine as well. If you finished with your comments or rebuttals and want to look to having an opportunity to supplement the record with written statements or written rebuttals, then we could discuss a timeline for that.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a comment, Ms. Danziger?
Oh, I could respond to a few things. The first comment, one of them was about the directional split. That's a slightly higher directional split. That's in part because they are looking to expand to include older students who would be driving and parking there. And that's one of the reasons why the directional split for K through 12 schools shows more people arriving and fewer departing than you would for, say, a K through 8 school. So that's one reason for that difference. I can't speak to the decision on the part of the agencies not to require the traffic analysis. If that's something that is conditioned or the team wants us to look at, we could certainly go back and do that. But it was scoped at the time with both agencies as requested there. With regard to speed studies on sight distance on Wise Road, given that we're trying to keep traffic from using Wise Road, that's a problem that exists, but unless the county were specifically looking to address that concern for the street itself, given that we're trying to keep the school parents from using that road as an access, I'm not sure that going back and doing any studies of that is something that should be the responsibility of the school.
Thank you. All right, let's talk the timing. Is there a request to keep the record open to provide additional materials for me to consider in making a decision in this concerning this application? Any request? I don't know. All right.
Sorry. I think we're satisfied with the record being open today, and we'll work to get our
Till
response.
4 p.m. All right.
Yep.
So
All
then
right,
that would
so-
be emailed to me in that scenario. And then I'll add it to the record. Okay.
All right. So is the applicant then, since there was no request to keep the record open, I'm assuming that what you mean, Mr. Lewis, is that you're not requesting an additional 7-day period for rebuttal. And what I mean is for example, in this particular case, a number of written comments came in that you did not have an opportunity to review in advance of the hearing, but are part of the record. So I would generally provide an opportunity for you to respond to those if you chose. And if there were an if someone asked for me to keep the record open for 7 days, I would ask if you wanted an opportunity to have an additional 7 days to rebut that. And if you, but since you haven't asked for either, does the applicant want to just waive that an opportunity for final written argument in response to additional written materials submitted?
Well, let me step back a bit at the expense of the risk of speaking for the rest of our team and ensuring that they have adequate capacity to respond. I think that may be beneficial to allow that 7-day period so that we can formulate our rebuttals.
All right. So what I'm going to say, what I ask is whether any party or member of the audience wants an opportunity to provide that additional evidence, arguments, or testimony. We did not have a response to that. I asked whether the applicant wished to waive the period for final written argument. It's not very clear, but you don't have to make that decision right now. If you review the materials that were submitted and you don't have anything additional to submit other than the proposal for conditions of approval that we're discussing about around that access through Wise Court for pickup and drop off, please submit an email saying you wish to waive that final period, and then I'll know. Okay? Is that?
Thank you.
I tried to make it as clear as I can, but I have habits that tend to make things kind of. Yes, Ms. Nesbitt.
Sorry, I just was wondering if I could clarify. So is the intent that the record will be kept open for 7 days? And then,
yes.
Okay,
yes.
And then then after the 7 days, there's the opportunity to comment on the new materials that were submitted within the 7 days, but potentially the applicant may waive their final argument.
Yes, it wasn't very clear. You're right.
And then, so can I just
kind of said that rather quickly. So,
yeah. So for the folks that are in attendance who might not be very familiar with the way the public hearings go, I just would like to be clear that they can also submit additional testimony within the 7 days. They will receive copies of everything that's been submitted, and then they could rebut that testimony as well, right?
Then yes, okay, so we have an initial 7-day period for anyone to submit additional documents because the applicant did ask for that.
Yep.
Then both the members of the public or also the applicant would have an additional 7-day period to rebut any of those statements in writing, submitting it to Ms. Dance.
Yep.
Then the applicant, if they choose, can waive either their rebuttal or they can waive their final 7-day period, or both. But in any case, because I may not receive any more documents after 4 p.m. today, right? So if there's nothing submitted and there's no request for additional time for submission of additional materials, then I'm stating that the applicant can ask that I can waive their final period and close the matter. Do you see it the same, Ms. Nesbitt?
So what I think I heard you say is the applicant has until 4 o'clock today to request to have the record be open for additional 7 days, followed by a 7-day rebuttal with the option to waive their final argument.
Yes.
Okay. And if that's the case, then I just wanted to reiterate that the public also can submit during that time as well. It's not just for the applicant. Right.
I did not receive any requests to keep the record open, but someone could.
Yep. Sorry.
Until
Thank you.
4 p.m. It's so confusing to me as well, because if no one requests an opportunity at the hearing to keep the record open, then why is there an opportunity for a rebuttal and a final written statement? But so but there we are. Okay. All right. Are any questions?
I didn't have a question about wondering if could add some discussion on the the Rust Way access. Hadn't this Can with Clackamas County Engineering. I know they've covered in the traffic study about the on-site queuing and the circulation, and our findings are that it's adequate. But one thing I was considering suggesting is there are conditions specifically saying that they're responsible for maintaining their queues on site so that they don't spill out onto Rust Way. I think it's implied by what the traffic study said, but I don't believe there's a specific condition saying that the school and church manage that on site so that we don't have backups under Rust Way.
Okay, something to that nature.
Somewhat similar to the discussion on Weiss Court, saying that there's no pickup and drop off there, but that the pickup and drop off that does occur on Rust Way that is managed on site and consistent with what was identified in the traffic study, so that it doesn't spill out onto Rust Way and cause congestion on the public roads.
I think that that the current situation, my understanding, Mr. Kent, is that there is a line of cars along Rust Way waiting to access that parking lot. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, what I'm explaining is that based on how they're managing it now, that there shouldn't be a line of cars, that it'll all be occurring on site, and that would be the condition of this on this project, is that they provide that management so that the cars are able to back up on site as necessary, pick up students and leave without causing that backup on the public street. If that makes sense.
It absolutely does. It's just I haven't really looked at what that might look like as a as a proposed condition, or even what do you call it? A recommended condition. Does the county have some proposal on this subject?
My understanding with the way that it sits currently is that the queuing, the 36 vehicle queuing, is in the parking lot on site.
Right.
As far as impacts to traffic that comes and goes from the site, the assessment says that roads are adequate. I don't know how you would stop cars from affecting the road and keep them all on the property. I don't know how we would look at that, because cars still have to get to and from the property.
Well,
what were you thinking in that condition,
Ken? Well, it's essentially that the applicant would manage their on-site drop-off and pick-up so that the queues don't back out onto the road. Effectively, we're saying as cars arrive, get in line, they can circulate, or they're backing up internally on the parking lot, not having to wait on Rust. This isn't referencing exiting necessarily, because as we've talked about, there's general congestion in the area. So part of the finding that the traffic study made, as well as the findings that we provided for this expansion of the site, is that they have adequate capacity on site to handle their drop off as they're currently processing it with the particular queue length and the amount of storage they have on site. So essentially, that's the intent of
the queue lane is adequate.
That the queue length is adequate, at least as currently described, and so that the applicant would continue to manage that and monitor it. Mainly just looking at addressing neighborhood impacts in the long term. If for some reason it starts to back up and now someone is driving on Rust Road and there's cars that are backing out of the site waiting to get in, that we want the applicant then to manage the on-site circulation so that doesn't occur.
Now, I have a couple questions on this topic, and I think it is important. So we are expanding, the proposal anticipates expanding to add high school students. And correct?
There are already high school students there.
There are already. So we're just expanding the entire school to increase more. Okay. Then has the applicant already employed, like different timing for starting and ending programs, like elementary school kids come in later than high school kids and are dismissed sooner, or things of that nature? I'm asking Mr. Smith.
We're in the process of creating a plan for that, with the idea of breaking down the lineage of cars by having different age groups picked up and dropped off at different times. Yes, we haven't set anything in place yet. I mean, we do have a different thing right now, but we're even looking at how we can, we're always looking to improve it, obviously. And so right now we're looking at how we want to tweak it again for next school year.
All right. I'm going to add some language here, and I would like you to take a shot at this, Mr. Smith, you and your team. A recommended condition of approval that that you employ employee like staggered release times, let's call it that, and work on the language, staggered release times to keep the queue length
Facilitate a smoother transition of drop off and pickup.
right. That's what I mean, release times or pick or drop off. We could call it drop off and pickup times. That sounds better to me. To keep queue lengths off the public roadway. And
Yeah, I guess my only caveat to that would be, so long as the queue at Highway 12 and Rust Way does not impact the ability to exit from the school, which thereby impacts the ability to enter the school.
I'm asking you to wordsmith this.
Okay, we'll work on it.
Okay.
And I just received an email from Randall Johnson requesting to keep the record open for an additional 7 days.
Okay, good.
So I'll add that to the record, and that is a
Okay.
formal request to leave the record open.
So the record's open for 7 days. The applicant is not required to respond to any of that, but if the applicant does respond, then the record will stay open for an additional 7 days for a rebuttal period to any materials. So you don't have to rebut, but if you do, it'll extend the record by an additional 7 days, followed by your last word opportunity. So if there are rebuttal materials, then the record's open for 14 days. And then at that time, you can decide whether you or not to waive that final period. There, I think this is clearer now. Okay, so I'm going to make a note that record stays open 7 days plus 7 if rebuttal. Wait, no, that's not clear at all. Record 7 days plus 7 days for rebuttal.
And then the deadline for submission of materials is 4 p.m.
It's
So
4
it'll be-
p.m.
Yeah.
I can put a date on this, and that would make that clearer.
4 p.m. on April 27th for the first 7 days.
4 p.m. April 27th.
And then 4 p.m. May 4th for the 14 days.
May 7th. Then that last 7 day period that I keep referencing is only for the applicant to have a final word, and you can.
Did I say
it
May
or
4th?
waive
I'm
it.
sorry. Did I speak wrong? May 4th.
Yeah.
May 4th?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that makes more sense.
I have
I'm
sevens
looking
on
at
my
the
head.
Like
calendar.
that's Monday.
Yes,
I'm
May 4th.
looking at the calendar. I apologize.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then final word. Potentially open to May 11th. I think I have that right.
Let me look.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, If you don't want the final word period, just write to Ms. Dance saying so.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all for participating in the hearing. And I'll look to receive 2 proposed conditions of approval. One of them, which I'm saying, well, I would prefer if they were both conditions of approval. So if you could craft something like that, but if you object to that, we can keep it as recommended condition of approval. I just think that it's to me, it remains a safety issue to keep cars and people and kiddos, you know, from going out into rust to get in a car because their pickup person is driving and parked and waving the kid over because, you know, we're all human. We do things that, you know, we shouldn't. So I would prefer that, but if you specifically ask me to keep it as a recommended, that's not the right word, but a recommended condition, not an enforceable condition. I'll state the right word when I do it. And but please craft something that makes sense on these 2 issues. Okay, thank you all. With that, I'll close this hearing.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.